So I hope you had some time to be flexible.
Upam, da ste imeli nekaj časa za to, da ste bili malo prilagodljivi, fleksibilni. Torej.
And something that I discovered when I was having conflicts,
Ena od stvari, ki sem jih odkrila, ko sem imela konflikte,
there will be times when Bernie and I were in a conflict,
je, da ko sva bila z Bernijem v nekem konfliktu
and I would suddenly feel very strong emotions about the subject.
in sem včasih nenadoma začutila zelo močne občutke glede te teme.
And the strength of those emotions really surprised me.
In moč teh občutkov me je presenetila.
Why do I feel so strongly about this?
Zakaj imam glede tega tako močna čustva?
And I realized that deep down there was a fear of something.
In spoznala sem, da nekje globoko v meni je bil strah pred nečem.
And I realized that a fear from the past had been triggered and was affecting my emotions today.
Spoznala sem, da je nek strah iz preteklosti sprožil moja čustva danes.
And I think when we start to think about it, we need to identify when that happens.
Ko začnemo razmišljati o tem, moramo prepoznati, kdaj se to zgodi.
Otherwise, we bring emotions from the past into something in the present and it gets confusing.
Sicer prinesemo čustva iz preteklosti v sedanjost in to povzroča zmedo.
And Bernie would even say to me, Karen, why are you feeling so strong? Because I tend to be quite a mild person.
Včasih mi je Bernie tudi rekel, Karen, zakaj glede tega čutiš tako močno, ker drugače sem zelo mirna oseba.
And I realized that something that he was saying, which was very innocent,
Včasih sem videla, da nekaj, kar govorim, je zelo sicer nedolžno.
reminded me of something very difficult that happened when I was a child.
Pa me je spomnilo na nekaj, kar sem težkega doživela v otroštvu.
When I was treated very badly by my first teacher at school,
Ko je recimo moj prvi učitelj v šoli zelo slabo ravnal z menoj,
and she shamed me horribly in front of the whole class.
me je ta učiteljica sramotila pred celotnim razredom.
And I realized that when I was having a discussion with Bernie,
In spoznala sem, da ko imam nek pogovor z Bernijem,
and he was being actually very normal and nice,
in je Bernie zelo normalen, zelo prijazen,
if I detected a hint of anything like shame,
če sem prepoznala samo namig na nekaj, kar je bilo blizu sramotenja,
it would open up this whole thing of pain in my
je
life.
to odprlo vso to bolečino v mojem življenju.
And once I stopped to think, okay, where does this come from?
Enkrat sem prenehala razmišljati, odkot to prihaja.
And I realized where it came from.
Sem razmišljala o tem in sem spoznala, odkot
I
je.
said, okay, those emotions belong with a 4-year-old child.
Te emocije pripadajo 4-letnemu otroku.
I need to have Bernie comfort that experience for me
Moram dovoliti, da Bernie pomiri to situacijo zame,
by listening to my story and giving me a hug and showing his care and
s tem,
concern
da posluša mojo zgodbo, da me objame, da mi pokaže skrb,
to help heal some of that story.
da mi pomaga, da se del te zgodbe zaceli.
And I can recognize now, okay, I could react strongly, but I know where that is related to now.
In zdaj se zavedam, da se lahko zelo močno odzovem, ampak vsaj vem, odkot to prihaja.
So that's helped me differentiate what am I feeling now and what are the feelings I'm borrowing from somewhere in the past that have been triggered.
In to mi pomaga ločiti med tem, kaj čutim zdaj in kaj so nekateri od občutkov, ki jih prinašam iz preteklosti.
So if I see that someone else might be triggered in their emotions,
Če vidim to pri nekom drugem,
I can say to them, let's just stop here,
lahko recimo takšni osebi rečem, ustavimo se za trenutek tukaj,
because I can see that this is really distressing you, this conversation.
ker vidim, da te ta pogovor zelo vznemirja.
And I'm just wondering if it reminds you of something that happened a
In
long time ago.
sprašujem se, ali te morda ne spominja na nekaj, kar se je zgodilo pred davnimi časi.
And maybe we could just think about that.
In mogoče lahko razmišljamo nekaj trenutkov o tem.
And they might not know right away,
Mogoče oseba ne prepozna takoj tega,
but that moment of care can help them.
ampak takšen trenutek izražanja skrbi lahko pomaga.
So we can also choose our battles
Prav tako seveda moramo oziroma je prav, da izbiramo svoje bitke.
and choose what's really important to fight about.
Izberemo tisto, glede česa se je res pomembno boriti.
Sometimes we pick arguments about things that, like potatoes.
Včasih se prepirate o stvarih, kot je krompir.
So when we want to have a discussion about something where there's a difference,
Kadar želimo torej imeti pogovor o nečem, kjer obstaja različno mnenje,
think, is this worth it?
se vprašajte, ali je vredno to.
Is this issue more important than the relationship?
Je ta tema pomembnejša od odnosa?
Is it just a small thing?
Ali je to samo neka majhna stvar?
Actually, happy couples tend to focus on their small resolvable issues,
Srečni pari se osredotočajo na majhne, rešljive stvari.
like where should we go for a date, or what should we eat for dinner, or where should we go on holiday.
Kam gremo na zmene, kaj bomo jedli za večerjo, kam gremo na dopust.
When they can solve their small things, they feel safe and confident in their
In
relationship.
ko lahko rešijo te male stvari, se počutijo varne v odnosu.
So you can practice on some small things, but resolve them well.
Lahko vadite na majhnih stvarih in jih dobro razrešite.
And now when I want to talk to Bernie about an issue,
In zdaj, ko recimo želim govoriti z Bernijem o neki temi,
I scale it on 1 to 10.
to poskušamo vrednotiti z lestvico od 1 do 10.
Okay, Bernie, I want to talk about this,
Bernie, želim govoriti o tem,
but before I start,
ampak preden začnem,
I want you to know this issue is a 2. It's like it's really small.
želim, da veš, da je to vprašanje po pomembnosti številka 2, torej
It's-
nekaj zelo majhnega.
It's not a big deal.
To ni velika stvar.
I just think we need to talk about it.
Potrebujem samo pogovor glede
And
tega.
I'm kind of flexible about how we solve this.
In fleksibilna, prilagodljiva sem glede tega, kako bova to rešila.
And that lowers his anxiety.
In to zmanjša njegovo tesnobo, ki jo čuti.
He's not thinking, oh no, what's she going to bring up this time?
Ne rabi razmišljati, o ne, o čem bo zdaj.
Because if someone starts to think that, then they go into their adrenaline stress
Ker če se to zgodi, potem se takoj spravimo v tisto adrenalinsko stanje
and the cortisol,
in stanje kortizola.
and we can trigger a fear that we don't need to trigger.
In sprožimo na ta način strah, ki ga ne bi rabili sprožiti.
And if it is an 8 issue,
Če pa gre za vprašanje, ki je po pomembnosti številka 8,
then I can let him know, actually, you know what, this is an 8 issue, we need to think about it seriously.
potem pa mu povem, to je pomembno vprašanje, številka 8, torej o tem morava resno razmisliti.
And I'll share something about how to talk about difficult things. Oh, here we go, yeah, your time.
Nekaj bom povedala o tem tudi, kako se pogovoriti glede
And
takih
then
stvari.
choose the time you want to talk about it,
Izberite si čas, ko se želite pogovarjati o tem.
when you're both relaxed,
Ko sta oba sproščena.
not when they just walk through the door from work,
Ne v hipu, ko nekdo stopi skozi vrata iz službe,
or when they're trying to meet a
to.
deadline,
ali ko je treba doseči, izpolniti neki rok,
or the car is broken down.
ali ko se avto pokvarja.
So you want to choose a time when you're both relaxed to talk about it,
Izberite si čas, ko sta oba sproščena, da se o tem pogovarjata.
and give the other person time to think about it.
In dajte drugi osebi čas, da razmisli o tem.
Because sometimes we brood over something for a few weeks.
Ker včasih se mi ukvarjamo, nekaj premlevamo več tednov,
How are we going to sort this one out?
kako bi lahko to rešili, kaj bi
How
naredili,
shall I bring it up?
kako naj spregovorimo o tem,
What could we do about it?
kaj lahko naredimo glede tega.
And you've thought about it for a while.
Nekaj časa je minilo, ko ste razmišljali o tem.
And when you've got it all sorted out in your brain,
In ko to v svojih mislih vse posortirate,
you then go and say, hey, we need to talk about something serious.
potem pridete do osebe in rečete, gledajte, moramo se o nečem resnem pogovoriti.
And the other person can feel ambushed, like, didn't know this was an issue.
In druga oseba lahko čuti, kot da se je znašla v zasedi. Nisem vedel, da je to neki problem.
And if we just throw it at them, they get panicked.
In če to preprosto vržemo pred to osebo, ta doživi paniko.
So if you give them time to think about it,
Če date čas osebi, da razmisli o tem,
you know what, I've been thinking about this
rečete, jaz sem razmišljal o tem
and wondering what we should do about
in
it,
se sprašujem, kaj bi naredila glede tega,
because it's something we probably need to deal with.
ker verjetno gre za nekaj, glede česar morava nekaj ukreniti.
And I realize I've been thinking about this and I have a few ideas, but I'd like to know what you think about it and what your ideas are.
Lahko rečem, jaz sem razmišljal o tem, imam nekaj predlogov, ampak zanima me, kaj ti misliš o tem.
So when do you think would be a good time for us to talk about this together?
Kdaj torej misliš, da bi bil pravi čas, da se o tem pogovorimo?
And that gives them some time to process it, to come up with some ideas. If we present it warmly, they feel safer.
In to da osebi čas, da vse to procesira, najde neke ideje, če damo občutek, torej, da skrbimo, če to naredimo prijazen način, se počuti varno.
And maybe someone ambushes you.
Mogoče pa kdo preseneti vas.
Hey, I need to talk about this
Reče, moramo se pogovoriti o tem.
now.
Zdaj.
You might say this.
Lahko rečete to.
I can see this is a really important thing for you.
Vidim, da je to zate res pomembna stvar.
And because it's so important for you, I really want to give it some serious thought too, to show my respect for
In
it.
ker je tako pomembna, bi tudi jaz rad razmislil o tem.
So I think it would be better if it's okay, we talk about it tomorrow evening.
Mislim, da bi bilo boljše, če se jutri zvečer pogovoriva o tem.
So by doing that, you allow yourself some space to think
Torej, ko
too.
to naredite, sami sebi omogočite prostor in čas, da razmišljate.
Because every conflict is a shared experience.
Ker vsaki konflikt je deljena izkušnja.
And the more we find an equal way to share it and prepare for it, the better.
In bolj enakopraven način, ko najdemo, da se pripravimo na to in ga delimo, bolje je.
And then start warmly.
In potem začnite prijazno.
This is so important.
To je tako pomembno.
And especially with teenagers.
Še posebej za najstnike.
I do another seminar about working with teenagers' brains, which are developing in a different way.
Imam še en seminar, ki govori o tem, kako delati z možgani otrok.
And they especially need us to start up our challenging conversations with them in a very warm way.
In najstniki imajo še posebej veliko potrebo, da tiste težke pogovore z njimi začnemo na prijazen, topel način.
Because teenagers are, while their brain is changing through teenage years, are more tuned to risk and to threat.
Ker teenageri, najstniki so torej bolj občutljivi za grožnje, za tveganja, ker njihovi možgani se razvijajo in spreminjajo.
And they spot it where we might not intend it.
In oni morda zapazijo nekaj, česar mi niti nismo nameravali.
So we need to smile and give a warm start-up so they feel safer.
Zato potrebujejo naš nasmeh in prijaznost, da se počutijo varne.
So a way to start warmly is to warmly acknowledge the other person's hopes and desires, what they want.
Prijazen začetek pomeni, da prijazno prepoznamo upe, želje druge osebe.
So I could say to Bernie with the potatoes,
Tako da lahko recimo Brniju pri krompirjih rečem:
I'm sorry, I know it must be so frustrating to eat potatoes every meal.
Vem, žal mi je, da smo morali jesti krompir vsak obrok.
I'm really sorry that I've done it again.
Žal mi je, da sem to spet naredila.
You know, if it's bothering you, because I love you, I'll cook something else, even right now.
Ampak ker te imam rada, lahko skuham nekaj drugega, celo zdaj.
Or I'll definitely cook something differently tomorrow.
Ali pa zagotovo bom pripravila nekaj drugega jutri.
We probably wouldn't have had that argument.
Verjetno se potem sploh ne bi prepirala glede
And
krompirja.
he could have started up warmly as well.
In on bi tudi lahko začel prijazno.
Well, potatoes again.
No, spet krompir,
But you know, I love you.
ampak veš, rad te imam.
And I'm just glad we have food on the table.
In vesel sem, da imamo kaj za pojesti.
But you know what, tomorrow?
Veš kaj?
Let's go out for pizza.
Gremo jutri na pico.
Always works well.
Vedno deluje.
So, the more care we express for the other person when we're going to have a conflict, then we activate that oxytocin and they will be calmer.
Več skrbi, kot pokažemo osebi, seveda lažje aktiviramo ta oksitocin in bolj mirni bomo.
And then we can say, you know what, you want this.
In potem lahko rečemo, veš kaj, ti želiš to
This is your idea.
in to je tvoja zamisel
And this is my idea.
in to je moja zamisel.
So how can we work together?
Kako lahko to združimo?
Don't use the word but.
Ne uporabljajte besede ampak.
When you say you want this and I want this, it speaks collaboration.
Ko rečete, ti želiš to in jaz želim to, to takoj pomeni sodelovanje.
But if I say you want that, but I want that,
Ko pa rečete, ti želiš to, ampak jaz
it puts a
želim
wedge
to,
in.
potem je to takoj razpoka.
Just that tiny word.
Ta ena beseda naredi razliko.
So sometimes I have to catch myself.
Včasih se moram ujeti sama sebe.
Sometimes I'll say the but word,
Včasih izrečem to ampak besedo,
and then I'll say, no, actually what I mean is you want this and I want
ampak
that.
potem se popravim in rečem, no, pravzaprav mislim, ti želiš to in jaz želimo to.
So if it does slip out, you can fix it.
Torej, če vam pobegne ta beseda, lahko popravim.
And then express your concerns for the situation in a warm and non-judgmental way.
In na to na prijazen način, neobsojajoč način izražite tudi svoje misli glede teme, o kateri se pogovarjate.
So, you know, say my husband says, I think we need to buy a new car.
Mož reče, mislim, da morava kupiti nov avto,
Our car's falling to pieces.
avto razpada.
I can panic and go, how on earth are we going to afford that?
In jaz lahko začnem paničariti, kako si bomo to privoščila.
And I can go into defense mode.
In takoj pridem v obrambno držo.
But I can say, yeah, I understand you need another car, we need another car.
Lahko pa rečem, ja, razumem, rabimo drug avto.
Because you have to drive it a lot and it's not okay for you that you're continually worried about when it's going to break down.
Ker ti se veliko voziš in ni prav, da si ves čas skrbi, kdaj se bo pokvaril avto.
And I know how important it is for us to have a good car.
In vem, kako pomembno je, da imamo zanesljiv avto.
I'm just a bit concerned about how we're going to pay for this,
Skrbi me samo, kako bova plačala to.
but I'm sure we can find a way.
Prepričana pa sem, da bova našla nek način.
And that helps say, I have some concerns, I care about your concerns, these are warmly my concerns, let's think about
In
this.
to sporoča, torej jaz imam določene skrbi glede tega, mar mi je tudi za tvoje misli glede tega, ampak nekaj bova naredila.
And say your teenager comes home and say, hey mom, I want to go to this party at the weekend.
In pride vaš najstnik domov in reče, mama, hočem iti na to neko zabavo, recimo ta vikend.
And the worst pictures of teenage parties go through your
In
mind.
seveda skozi vaše možgane grejo najhujše slike, kaj se dogaja.
There'll be drugs, there'll be alcohol,
Droge, mamila,
all kind of risks,
vsa mogoča tveganja.
and your anxiety escalates.
In seveda vaša tesnoba poskoči.
And you can say, there's no way you're going to a party like that.
In pol rečete, ne, nikakor ne greš na nekaj takega.
As a caring parent, I can't let you go into such a dangerous
Kot
place.
skrben starš ne morem dovoliti, da greš na tako nevaren kraj.
So your teenager walks out, slams the door, and they don't speak to you for 3 days.
In vaš najstnik zapusti sobo, zelo putne z vrati in sledi 3 dni tišine.
Or you can try this.
Ali pa lahko poskušate na ta način.
That's lovely.
To je lepo.
It's really nice to get an invitation to a party.
Lepo je dobiti povabilo na nekaj takega.
I'm really glad you've got friends.
Vesela sem, da imaš prijatelje.
And it's lovely to have fun with them.
In lepo je zabavati se z njimi.
And I am here to help you have the happiest experience
In jaz sem tukaj zato, da ti pomagam do najboljših, najsrečnejših izkušenj.
and to be safe.
In da si varen.
So let's think together about what might be some of the risks at this party.
Zato razmislimo skupaj o tem, kaj so mogoče neka tveganja povezana s
What are
tem.
the things that you've heard about where parties have gone wrong?
Kaj si slišal ali slišala o tem, da se lahko zgodi na takšnih zabavah?
And of course, not all parties end up that way,
In seveda to ne pomeni, da se vse konča na isti način.
but I wonder how we can work together to make sure that you're safe and you have the best time.
Sprašujem pa se, kaj lahko narediva, da boš varen in da boš se imel lepo.
So how will we deal with some of those challenges?
Kako se bo torej lotila teh izzivov?
And you can work together on how you will manage the risks, how they will manage the risks,
In na ta način se lotite upravljanja s tveganji pri sebi in pri tej drugi osebi.
With our children, we said, if you call us from a party, we will come and get you wherever you're at, if you feel
Otrokom
unsafe.
lahko rečete, ko in če me pokličeš, pridem po tebe, kjerkoli si in boš varen.
So one of the boundaries might be, I would like you to be home by 11 o'clock.
Ena od mej, ki jih pri tem postavimo, je recimo rečemo, ampak želim si, da si doma do 11.
But if they break any of the things that you've agreed together to manage the risk,
Če pa prekršijo katero od teh stvari, o katerih ste se dogovorili za upravljanje teh tveganj,
you can say, if it's difficult to manage this risk at these boundaries, we need to bring them tighter the next time you go to a party.
preprosto lahko rečete, če je težko živeti s temi mejami, ki smo jih dali in jih spoštovati, jih moramo naslednjič zaostriti.
So about collaborating about the rules and managing the risk,
Sodelujete glede pravil, upravljate s tveganji
and if they break the rule, you have to make it tighter before they can be
in če je
released
pravilo
again.
prekršeno, mora postati strožje.
So it's our problem.
To je najina težava.
As I mentioned, that conflict is something that is between 2 or more people.
Kot sem omenila, je konflikt nekaj, kar je med dvema ali več ljudmi.
It's not stuck in either one of us.
Ni nekaj, kar je obtičalo v komorkoli od naju.
So when we use words like we, our and us, it invites collaboration.
Kadar uporabljamo besede midva, najno, nama, potem to kliče po sodelovanju.
So this is our problem. I wonder what we can do about it together.
To je najina težava, kaj lahko glede nje narediva.
What are your ideas? What are my ideas?
Kaj so tvoje ideje, kaj so moje ideje glede tega.
And then we can begin to solve it.
In potem začnemo reševati to težavo.
You know what this problem with the potatoes?
Težava je krompir,
It's our problem.
to je najina težava.
How can we resolve it?
Kako jo lahko rešimo
And you will sort that out later.
in to razrešiti.
I found another really useful thing.
Našla sem še eno zelo učinkovito stvar.
is to lower your voice
To pa je, da začnete govoriti tiše,
instead of raising it.
namesto da govorite glasneje.
Because the more we raise our voice, as I did in the potato argument,
Ker bolj ko dvigujemo svoj glas, kot sem jaz pri prepirju o krompirju,
the more the other person will raise theirs.
bolj bo druga oseba govorila glasneje.
But if I speak calmly and whisper
Ampak če govorim mirno, šepetam,
and speak with a kind voice and respectful words
s prijaznim glasom, s spoštljivimi besedami
and let the other person know I care about you,
in povem drugi osebi, da mi je mar za njo,
then it tends to lower the escalation.
potem to znižuje napetost.
I don't know how many conflicts King Solomon had with 1,000 wives,
Ne vem, koliko konfliktov je imel kralj Salomon s svojimi 1000 ženami,
or maybe because you're a king, no one fights with you.
ali pa mogoče, ker je bil kralj, se nihče ni prepiral z njim,
But somewhere he'd learned this wisdom,
ampak tukaj je njegova modrost.
that a gentle answer turns away wrath.
Mil odgovor pomirja togoto.
And then listen well.
In potem dobro poslušajte.
Really listen carefully to the other person.
Res skrbno poslušajte drugo osebo.
One of the biggest problems with most conflicts is people are not listening to each other.
Ena od največjih težav v večini konfliktov je, da ljudje ne poslušajo drug drugega.
They don't let each other know that they've heard the other person.
Ne povejo drugi osebi, da so jo slišali.
While one person is talking,
Medtem ko ena oseba govori,
we're thinking about a better answer.
razmišljamo o boljšem odgovoru.
What can we say that's got a bit more power than the last
Kaj
time?
lahko rečemo, kar bo imelo več moči kot tisto, kar smo rekli prej?
What can I say that will help me win this?
Kaj lahko rečem, da bom zmagal v tem?
And then it just gets worse.
In potem vse skupaj postane slabše.
And there was a project done where they taught arguing couples to listen to each other.
V nekem projektu so učili pare, ki so se prepirali, kako poslušati drug drugega.
So I'm going to get you to do this in a minute, so you need to listen to this.
Čez nekaj minut bom to naredila, zato poslušajte dobro zdaj o tem.
So one person talks,
Ena oseba govori,
maybe they have the pen,
mogoče ima kuli,
and you can only talk when you have the pen,
lahko govorite samo, ko imate kuli.
and the other person has to listen.
Druga oseba pa mora poslušati.
But they don't just listen,
Ampak ne posluša samo,
they listen so they can sum up what the other person has said.
posluša na ta način, da lahko povzame, kaj je prva oseba rekla.
And this helps to slow the conversation down,
To pomaga upočasniti pogovor.
helps them to listen better,
Pomaga poslušati bolje
and actually helps them to develop more empathy for the other.
in pomaga razviti več empatije za drugo osebo.
Because when we take their words in and we verbalize them, it helps us somehow connect with them.
Ker ko sprejmemo vaše besede, ki jih je nekdo izrekel in jih potem izrazimo s svojimi besedami,
So one
nam
person,
to pomaga biti empatičen.
just shares one or two things.
Ena oseba, recimo, če imate dve osebi, podeli eno ali dve stvari, misli,
Don't talk too much.
ne govori preveč.
The other person's desperately trying to remember everything you said.
Druga oseba si poskuša zapomniti vse, kar je bilo rečeno.
So make one or two points at a time.
Torej, poveste v taki situaciji eno ali dve stvari naenkrat.
And then the speaker keeps hold of the pen,
Tisti, ki govori, torej govorec ima še naprej kuli v roki,
and the listener will sum up what they said.
poslušalec pa povzame, kaj je bilo rečeno.
And then when the first person has made one or two points that have been heard and understood,
In ko je govorec podal točko ali dve, ki sta bili razumeti, slišani tudi,
you give it to the other person.
date kuli drugi osebi.
What you say is just your perspective on the situation or what you would like.
To, kar poveste, kar govorite, je pravzaprav vaše videnje situacije, kar vi želite.
You don't talk about the other person,
Ne govorite o drugi osebi,
you just speak for yourself.
ampak govorite zase.
And when you answer, you just answer what the other person has said. You don't speak for yourself at that point.
Ko odgovarjate, torej odgovarjate na to, kar je oseba rekla.
And you don't argue with them or deny what they said. You just let them say it and you repeat it back.
Ne prepirate se, ne razpravljate glede tega, ampak preprosto poslušate in dovolite, da oseba izrazi svoje misli in to ponovite.
And this is doing what James says, be quick to listen.
In to je tisto, kar Jako pravi, bodite hitri za poslušanje.
Because one of the biggest problems in most conflicts is that people don't listen to each other
Ker ena
well.
od največjih težav v večini konfliktov je, da ljudje ne poslušajo drug drugega.
When you really hear someone else's perspective,
Ko slišite perspektivo drugega
and they really hear yours,
in ta druga oseba sliši vašo perspektivo,
it then sets a good foundation for solving it
to
together.
postavi dober temelj za razrešitev težave.
So I'm going to give you a time to practice this.
Zdaj vam bom dala nekaj časa, da boste vadili to.
But don't panic, I'm not going to make you talk about your biggest conflict in your life.
Ampak nič panike ni potrebno, ne rabite govoriti o svojih največjih konfliktih.
I'm just going to get you to talk about where you like to go on holiday.
Govorite o tem, kam bi radi šli na dopust.
And to say, I like to go here because I like to do this.
In rečete, rad ali rada bi šla tja, ker rad počnem to.
And I enjoy this.
In uživam v tem.
And then the other person will sum up.
In potem naj druga oseba povzame, kaj ste povedali.
And then they will have the pen.
Potem bo ta drugi osebi boste dali kuli.
And they will talk about
In zdaj ta druga oseba govori,
what they like to do on holiday.
Kaj bi rada počne na dopustu.
And chances are, even if you're a couple, they'll be different.
In verjetnost je, da tudi če ste kot par skupaj in se pogovarjate, da bodo razlike.
So it's just an exercise in just doing that listening.
Zato je to vaja, kako lahko poslušam.
And you can do it in twos.
Lahko to počnete v parih, po dve osebi torej.
If there's a three in your row, then the third person can keep an eye on the others, make sure they're following all the rules.
Če ste trije skupaj, potem naj tretja oseba spremlja, kaj se dogaja, da upoštevate pravila.
Or you can go and find another partner.
Ali pa preprosto poiščete novega pogovornega partnerja.
Or you just might like to offer to just listen to another people if you don't want to do this yourself.
Ali pa samo prisluhnete temu, kar se dogaja, če sami ne želite tega povedati.
Or if you're an introvert like me and this really freaks you out, you can just sit where you are, it's fine.
Če ste introvert, kot sem jaz, in vas to zdaj prestraši, potem samo sedite.
So whatever works for you.
Karkoli je okej za vas.
But it's useful to listen and sum up.
Ampak koristno je torej, da poslušate in potem povzamete, kar ste slišali, kar vam je oseba povedala.
Another alternative is that you sit with a partner.
Še ena alternativa je ta, da sedite s partnerjem.
And you take it in turns to say what you've heard me say.
In preprosto povete izmenično, kaj ste slišali, da sem jaz povedala.
Not everything, just like
Ne vse, ampak
just one or two things that stand
eno ali
out.
dve stvari, ki ste jih slišali od mene.
Okay, do you all understand what to do?
Torej, razumemo, kaj treba narediti.
I know it sounds a really simple task, but it's really important to
Vem,
practice.
da zveni to kot zelo preprosta naloga, ampak pomembno je vaditi.
Because one of the greatest things we need to do is to listen better.
Ker ena od najboljših oziroma najpomembnejših stvari, ki jih moramo narediti, je, da bolje poslušamo.
So I'll give you 5 minutes to do this. It's not going to last long.
5 minut vam dam časa za to, torej ni to veliko časa.
And do what's comfortable for you.
Naredite tisto, v čem se dobro počutite,
But just practice this listening back and forth.
ampak samo vadite to izmenično poslušanje.
So use a pen or a piece of paper.
Uporabite torej nek predmet, kuli ali list ali karkoli. Tisti, ki ima kuli, govori, drugi je tiho ta čas. Samo povzame, can I just repeat the instruction? Samo povzame, kaj je slišal. Okay? Dobro? Pol pa zamenjate. Upam, da ste bili slišani.
I certainly heard plenty of talking.
Slišala sem veliko govorjenja.
So I hope there was plenty of listening.
Upam tudi, da je bilo veliko poslušanja.
And it sounds just really simple and basic.
Zveni zelo preprosto, zelo osnovno.
I was teaching this to some teenagers.
O tem sem poučevala najstnike.
And I thought, they're going to think I'm a complete idiot teaching them to listen.
In mislila sem, da bodo mislili zame, da sem popoln idiot, da jih učim poslušati.
And this young man came to me and he said,
In k meni je prišel nek mlad fant in rekel,
that was amazing.
to je bilo osupljivo.
He said, I always thought no one wanted to listen to me.
Vedno sem mislil, da me nihče ne želi poslušati.
No one wanted to hear about my story.
Da nihče ne želi slišati moje zgodbe.
He said, so I would just say things quickly and then just stop.
Zato sem vedno hitro povedal stvari in se potem ustavil.
But now I know what it's like to really be heard.
Ampak zdaj vem, kaj pomeni biti res slišan.
I want to make sure I listen better to everybody I meet.
In želim poskrbeti za to, da bom bolje poslušal vse ljudi, s katerimi se bom srečal.
Of course, he shared more than where he'd like to go to on holiday. He was sharing a sad story from his childhood.
Seveda je podelil več kot to, kam želi iti na dopust. Podelil eno žalostno zgodbo iz svojega otroštva.
And I was teaching people not just to listen, but to listen and then comfort.
Jaz učim torej ljudi, da ne samo poslušajo, ampak tudi slišijo in to lažijo.
Because when people have been deeply hurt, listening and comforting them is one of the best ways we can help to heal them.
Ker ko so ljudje bili zelo prizadeti, je to, da jih poslušamo in jih potolažimo, največ, kar lahko naredimo velikokrat.
And sometimes the person that's causing the most conflict is actually deeply, deeply hurt inside.
In včasih oseba, ki povzroča največ konfliktov, je oseba, ki je globoko v sebi prizadeta.
And when they feel heard and cared for, it can start to heal them.
In ko začutimo, da so ranjeni, jih lahko začnemo pomagati, da se te rane celijo.
Well, as we discovered with the potato argument, blaming, insulting, shouting and leaving and slamming doors usually makes things
Kot
worse.
smo ugotovili pri prepiru s krompirji, je to, da nekoga drugega krivimo, žalimo, vpijemo nanj, loputamo z vrati, ne poboljša stvari.
And in Romans 12, Paul says, honor one another above yourselves.
In Rimljanom 12 nam apostol Pavel pravi, da naj spoštujemo drugega bolj kot sebe.
When we treat each other with respect, it will tend to lower conflict.
Ko drug z drugim ravnamo spoštljivo, potem znižujemo možnost za konflikt.
And when I work with families where there's conflict,
Ko delam z družinami, v katerih je konflikt,
it can be quite interesting.
je to lahko zelo zanimivo.
And they'll tell me about an argument,
Takrat mi pripovedujejo o kakšnih prepirih
and then I say, do you always argue this way?
in potem jaz vprašam, se vedno prepirate na ta način?
What happens if you had a conflict with your boss?
Kaj bi se zgodilo, če bi imeli konflikt s svojim šefom?
How would you talk to him?
Kako bi se z njim pogovarjali?
How would you respond?
Kako bi se odzvali?
Well, I wouldn't do that at work.
Ne, tega ne bi naredil v službi,
I'd lose my job.
ker bi izgubil službo.
But you know how to do it there.
Torej veste, kako je treba narediti.
If you can manage that conflict with your boss in a polite way,
Če se lahko s svojim šefom prepirate na prijazen način,
then you have the skills to do the same thing at home.
potem imate sposobnosti, da to isto naredite doma.
So I want you to imagine that your partner is your boss.
Zato si želim, da si predstavljate, zamišljate, da je vaš partner vaš šef
And talk to them as if you were talking with your boss.
in se pogovarjate, kot se bi z njim pogovarjali.
Because actually they're more important than your boss.
Ker v resnici so še pomembnejši od vašega šefa.
And I know you know how to do it.
In vem, da veste, kako je treba narediti stvari.
So just transfer those skills to this different situation.
Zato preprosto prenesite te sposobnosti v to drugo situacijo.
There was also a story of a couple who would have terrible arguments.
Je zgodba o paru, ki je imel res izjemen velik prepir.
And this couple was coming to see a friend of mine,
Ta par je prišel k mojemu prijatelju,
who was a couple therapist in a very distant country.
ki je bil terapevt za pare v drugi državi.
So the first time they came, he was making some notes about their arguments.
Prvič, ko sta prišla, sta zapisala nekaj stvari glede svojega prepira.
And we tend to ask, so when do they happen? What's going on?
Takrat sprašujemo, recimo, kdaj se je to zgodilo, kaj se je dogajalo,
What do you mostly argue about?
o čem se največkrat prepirate.
And then he asked, and which room in the house do you argue the most?
In potem je vprašal, v kateri sobi v stanovanju se največkrat prepirate.
There was a stunned silence.
Potem je bila tišina.
This was obviously a very difficult question.
Ker to je bilo očitno zelo težko vprašanje.
They looked at each other a bit sheepishly,
Pogledala sta tako sramežljivo drug drugega
and they said, well,
in sta rekla, no,
she stands in the kitchen at one end of the house,
ona stoji v kuhinji na enem koncu hiše,
and I stand in the living room at the other end of
jaz
the
pa v
house.
dnevni sobi na drugem koncu hiše.
Well, kind of, no wonder you shout, right?
Ni čudnega, da vpijeta, ne?
So this therapist says, okay,
Ta terapeut torej pravi, ok,
I don't want you to do anything different this week except to have your arguments at the dining table face to face.
pravi, ta teden ne rabite narediti nič drugače, razen to, da boste se prepirala za kuhinjsko mizo iz oči v oči.
At least be in the same room
Bodite v isti sobi
and at least be able to give each other eye
in
contact.
bodite torej v stanju, da boste gledala drug drugega v oči.
Well, they went away,
Odšla sta
and the next time they had their appointment, they were a bit late.
in ko sta naslednjič imela svoj termin pri terapeutu, sta zamujala.
And my friend was thinking, oh, I really blew that, they're not coming back.
Prijatelj je verjetno razmišljal, to sem res naredil narobe in ne bo jih nazaj.
But they finally turned up
Ampak sta prišla
and
na
they
koncu,
came in,
vstopila,
laughing and smiling.
se smejala.
They obviously looked a lot friendlier than they did the first time they
Videti
came.
sta bila veliko bolj prijateljska drug do drugega kot prvič.
So as many couple therapists they do this, so what went well in the last week?
In kot terapeuti to naredimo, torej vprašajo, kaj je bilo dobro od prejšnjega tedna.
And they said, well,
In sta rekla, ja.
when we sat down at the table and looked at each other
Ko sva sedla za mizo in se gledala
and we tried to argue,
in sva se poskušala prepirati,
we just burst out laughing
smo se začela smejati.
because we realized how funny we look
Ker sva se zavedala, kako smešna smo
when
pravzaprav,
we're
videti,
both trying to shout.
ko poskušava oba torej vpiti.
So it really helped us to at least sit at the same table and look at each other when
Pomagalo
we
nam je, da
discuss
smo
these
sedela
things.
za isto mizo in se o tem pogovarjala.
There was other stuff they needed to work on, but that's an important lesson. At least be in the same room.
Bile so še druge stvari, ki sta jih morala narediti, ampak tu je bil pomemben nauk, vsaj v isti sobi bodite.
Do the respectful thing of at least sitting down at the same table together.
Naredite spoštljivo stvar in vsaj sedite za isto mizo in se pogovorite.
And then put yourself in the other person's shoes too.
In potem si obujte čevlje druge osebe.
This is really hard when we're very upset and distressed
To
and
je
angry
zelo težko, ko smo zelo vznemirjeni in jezni,
because we can't do the empathy thing.
ker takrat ne moremo biti empatični.
But we can think about what is important to them and why.
Ampak lahko se vprašamo, kaj je pomembno za to drugo osebo in zakaj.
Why is this issue so important to
Zakaj je
them?
ta stvar tako pomembna za njo?
How is their past experience shaping how they respond to this?
Kako njene ali njegove prejšnje izkušnje vpliva na odziv?
Is there trauma or fear or something that is affecting their
Je
response?
kakšna travma, strah ali karkoli drugega, kar vpliva na to?
How can I care for them and be kind to them?
Kako sem lahko prijazen do te osebe?
So empathy can help a lot in diffusing conflicts.
Empatija nam lahko torej zelo pomaga v razreševanju konfliktov.
I hope you all have a piece of paper because in a moment I'm going to get you to write something down.
Upam, da imate list papirja, ker čez nekaj trenutkov vam bom dala nalogo, da nekaj zapišete.
Because I have developed this complaint form.
Jaz sem razvila ta obrazec za pritožbe,
But it's not really a complaint
ampak
form.
ni v resnici obrazec za pritožbe.
When couples come to me, I say, in this room, there will be no complaints about each other.
Ko pari pridejo k meni, potem rečem, tukaj v tem prostoru se ne bomo pritoževali en čez drugega.
Oh, that's a pain, they think.
To je bolečina, to je
I
težko.
really want to
verjetno
complain
mislijo.
about them.
Ker res bi se rad pritoževal čez njo.
But if you complain about your spouse in front of a therapist, it doesn't make anyone feel good.
Ampak če se pritožujete čez svojega partnerja pred terapeutom, nikomor to ne pomaga.
And so it doesn't tend to be very helpful.
Zato ni to zelo koristno.
So I say, look, what I want you to do is if you have a special request for your partner,
In zato pravim tako, če imate neko posebno željo, prošnjo za svojega partnerja,
I can tell you that nagging and complaining doesn't work.
vam lahko povem, da tečnarjenje in pritoževanje ne bo delovalo.
So let's try making a polite request for
Zato
something.
poskušajmo napisati to na en prijazen način.
So I have a polite request form,
In zato imam ta obrazec za prijazne prošnje.
and it's printed out with these words on it.
In natisnjen je s temi besedami, ki so tu,
English words.
ki so sicer v angleščini. Ja.
In this situation,
Torej v tej situaciji, v teh okoliščinah,
be specific,
bodite konkretni,
not you always, you never.
ne vedno ali nikoli. Ne.
And don't use you where possible.
In ne uporabljajte besede ti, kadarkoli je to možno.
In this situation, when this specific thing happens,
V tej situaciji, ko se ta stvar zgodi,
I feel,
čutim,
put in your emotions,
opišete svoje občutke,
because,
ker,
say why.
zakaj.
And it would really help me if you would.
In res bi mi pomagalo, če bi.
And then I could help you by.
In potem lahko jaz pomagam tebi s tem.
And then what ideas do you have that would help us to work this out?
In potem, kakšne ideje imaš ti, ki bi nama obema koristile?
I've learnt this.
To sem se naučila.
So when I start a conversation with Bernie and I say, you know what, in this situation,
Ko začnem pogovor z Bernijem in začnem, veš kaj, v teh okoliščinah,
when this happens,
ko se to zgodi,
I feel,
čutim, se
Because
počutim,
he,
zato
he knows.
on že ve
And even that just makes us laugh.
in že to naj pripravi do smeha.
So I tend to write this down first and practice it.
To običajno zapišem in vadim.
so that I've got it clear in my head and I can say it in a nice way.
Tako da imam v svoji glavi vse razčiščeno in da lahko prijazno to povem.
I can tell you that sometimes I've just written this down in my head
Včasih sem to zapisala v svojih mislih
and I think, maybe I can just live with that.
in potem sem prišla do sklepa, mogoče lahko s tem živim.
Or what could I do differently that would make this better?
Ali pa kaj lahko jaz naredim drugače, da bi stvari bile boljše.
So I've written a few of these that I've never actually said to Bernie
Nekaj teh stvari, recimo sem moče zapisala, moče nikoli izrekla to.
because I found another way to deal with
Ker
it.
sem našla drugi način.
So here's an example
Imamo en primer
for the potatoes.
za krompir.
This is how I might say it,
Kako bi lahko jaz povedala to o krompirju?
or how Bernie would say it, I
Ali
think.
pa Bernie.
When we eat potatoes every meal
Ko jeva krompir pri vsakem obroku,
for 5 days in a row,
5 dni zaporedoma,
I feel bored and a bit frustrated.
se počutim zdolgočasen in malo frustriran,
Because I like to eat different things.
ker rad jem različne stvari.
And it would be nice if we just ate potatoes like once a day.
In lepo bi bilo, če bi krompir jedla samo enkrat na dan.
And then I think I'd feel a bit happier.
Potem mislim, da bi bil bolj srečen.
I guess you're probably bored with potatoes too.
Mislim, da tudi tebi krompir ni posebej pri srcu.
So what ideas do you have?
Torej, kakšne predloge pa imaš ti?
So think how that conversation goes differently to the argument I had earlier.
Ali lahko vidite, kako drugače bi šel takšen pogovor v primerjavi s prepirom, ki sem ga prej imel?
It might be for your child.
It?
Might be for your child. You could
Morda gre za vašega otroka.
My son would come home and leave his football kit all muddy under his bed.
Moj sin je recimo prišel domov in pustil svojo opremo za nogomet vso blatno pod svojo posteljo.
And he'd wash his hands and come down for dinner
Omil si je roke, prišel na večerjo
until next week.
do naslednjega tedna,
And it's the day for football.
ko je bil čas za nogomet.
Mom, I need a clean football kit.
Pravi, mama, moram očistiti vso opremo za nogomet.
Why didn't you wash it?
Zakaj nisi oprala tega?
Actually, you know, what you need to do is to put it in the laundry.
Pravi, veš kaj, kar moraš narediti, je, da daš to v košaro za perilo.
So when you leave your muddy football kit under the bed all week,
Ker ko cel teden pustiš svojo blatno opremo pod posteljo
and then you want a clean one on Tuesday,
in potem hočeš v torek čisto,
I feel a bit frustrated
takrat sem frustriran.
because I want you to have clean
Ker
clothes.
hočem, da imaš čisto obleko,
But it would really help me if you actually put them next to the washing
ampak
machine,
pomagalo bi mi, če bi to vse umazano prinesel do pralnega
and
stroja.
then I can have them cleaned for you.
Ker potem lahko jaz to operem zate.
What ideas do you have?
Kakšne ideje pa imaš ti?
So what I want you to do is to think of a small thing that you would like to make a request of for somebody else,
Pomislite na neko drobno stvar, za katero bi želeli nekoga nekaj prositi. da
or
naredi.
just even imagine a
Ali pa
situation,
si izmislite situacijo.
and then maybe one you've had in the past, and then write out
Ali pa nekaj, kar ste imeli v preteklosti in potem to zapišite.
Write it out as this polite request rather than a complaint.
Zapišite to kot to prijazno prošnjo, ne pa pritožbo.
So if we go back one.
Ja.
So
I will translate it quickly.
just start to think how you would write that and write it on the piece of paper.
Torej, razmišljajte, kako bi to naredili
If
in
nothing else,
zapišite.
just write down the formula
Če pa ne, pa si vsaj to formulo zapišite.
or take a picture of it on your phone.
Ali pa naredite sliko na svojem telefonu.
You can use this at work, with friends, with teenagers, people you live with.
Te ideje lahko uporabite na delovnem mestu, z ljudmi, s katerimi živite.
Because often we don't talk about important things because we're not quite sure how to do it safely.
Ker velikokrat se ne pogovarjamo o pomembnih stvarih, ker preprosto ne vemo, kako se lahko na varen način pogovarjamo o tem.
But this can give you a nice framework for having that conversation in a gentle way.
To pa vam lahko da en okvir, kako imeti en nežen, lep pogovor.
It's respectful, kind, peaceful,
Spoštljivo, mirno, prijazno.
and it invites the other person's ideas too.
In povabite tudi drugo osebo, da poda svoje zamisli.
So it doesn't make you look like you're the only one who knows how to deal with it.
In to ne pusti potem vtisa, da ste vi tisti, ki vse ve, kako je treba biti narejeno.
So I hope you've had maybe some chance at writing this out for yourself.
Upam, da ste imeli priložnost kaj recimo zapisati v tej smeri zase.
We can use it in all sorts of situations.
Kot sem rekla, lahko uporabite v vseh možnih situacijah ta način.
So when someone walks over my nice clean kitchen floor with muddy feet,
Ko nekdo hodi po mojih čistih kuhinjskih tleh z blatnimi čevlji,
when I have just cleaned it,
tleh, ki sem jih ravno kar očistila,
I feel frustrated
takrat čutim frustracijo.
because we all like it when the house is clean and
Ker
tidy.
vsem nam je všeč, ko je hiša pospravljena in čista.
And it took a while to get it nice.
In bilo je potrebno nekaj časa za to, da je prišla v to stanje.
So it would really help me if you would leave your muddy shoes outside the door.
Res bi bilo dobro in pomagalo bi mi, če blatne čevlje pustiš zunaj, pred vrati.
Or if you want me to, I could put some newspaper down for you.
Ali pa, če želiš, lahko nekje dam nek časopis zate, da greš.
What ideas do you have?
Kakšne ideje imaš pa ti?
So once you get that formula in your head, it can be very useful.
Ko enkrat ta formula pride v vaše misli, je lahko zelo uporabna.
So it's really important to try for win-win situations.
Zelo pomembno je, da si prizadevamo za situacije, v katerih vsi zmagamo.
It's
Vsi dobimo.
more important to protect a valuable relationship than to win an argument.
Pomembneje je ohraniti dragocen odnos, kot pa zmagati v prepiru.
Because whenever one person wins, the other person is hurt.
Ker kadarkoli ena oseba zmaga, je druga oseba prizadeta.
When we go back to the beginning, the kind of conflict where one person always wants to win is one of the most painful to live in.
Če se vrnemo na začetek, potem se bomo spomnili, da najslabši možen konflikt je takšen, kjer ena oseba želi vedno zmagati.
I once met a man who said, I have won every argument I've ever had.
Nekoč sem srečala nekoga, ki je rekel, jaz sem zmagal v vsakem konfliktu, v katerem sem.
Thinking, maybe I don't want to have a conversation with you.
In sem pomislila, mogoče se pa jaz ne bi rada pogovarjala s tabo.
And actually, not only had he won every argument, he had broken every relationship.
Ne samo, da je zmagal v vsakem prepiru, ampak je izgubil vsak odnos.
But his need to win came from a serious trauma in his childhood.
Ampak njegova potreba po zmagovanju je izvirala iz resne travme v njegovem otroštvu.
When he was repeatedly forced to do something that was frightening.
Ko je bil večkrat prisiljen narediti nekaj, kar je bilo zanj zastrašujoče.
So now the only way he can feel safe is to be in control of everything.
Zato je edini način, ko se zdaj lahko počuti varnega, ta, da ima vse pod nadzorom.
So when you win, realize there's a great cost and a loss.
Ko torej zmagujete, se zavedajte, da obstaja velika cena za to.
And I love this quote from Mark Matthews.
In všeč mi je ta navedek Marka Matthewsa.
Apologizing does not mean that you are right or wrong.
Opravičiti se ne pomeni, da imate prav ali da nimate prav.
It just means you value your relationship more than your ego.
Ampak samo, da cenite vaš odnos bolj kot svoj ego.
And you can apologize, I am sorry that what I said hurt you.
In lahko se opravičite in rečete, žal mi je, da je to, kar sem rekel, prizadelo tebe.
So think what's most important and do things that take care of your relationship rather than your ego.
Zato razmišljajte o stvarih, ki bodo poskrbele za vaš odnos, ne pa za vaš ego.
So, brain versus heart.
Možgani proti srcu.
This is another story from my life with Bernie.
To je še ena zgodba iz mojega življenja z Bernijem.
And we're both family therapists.
Oba smo družinska terapeuta.
Our children are teenagers.
Otroci in najstniki.
And they said, we need to start a club for all teenagers whose parents are family
Naši
therapists.
so rekli, da bi morali začeti en klub za otroke in najstnike vseh družinskih terapeutov.
To help them survive this process.
Da bi jim pomagal preživeti ta proces.
That was just a joke. But anyway, we decided that it was very important for them to watch us have healthy conflicts.
Z Brnjem smo se odločili, da je zelo pomembno, da otroci vidijo, da imava zdrav konflikt.
Because how do young people learn how adults have conflicts in loving relationships?
Ker kako se mladi ljudje naučijo, da imajo odrasle osebe konflikte v zdravih odnosih?
Because mostly young people don't see their parents have these good discussions.
Ker večinoma ti mladi ljudje ne vidijo svojih staršev, ki imajo te dobre pogovore.
And most of us who've experienced conflict in the home was usually a not good conflict that happened in front of us.
In večina nas, ki je doživela konflikte v naših domovih, je doživela konflikte, ki niso bili dobri.
Or relationships that avoid conflict.
Ali pa odnose, kjer so se izogibali konfliktom.
So we decided that we should have some well-managed conflicts in the presence of our teenage children.
Zato sva se odločila, da pač bova morala imeti neke konflikte, s katerimi bova dobro upravljala tudi v navzočnosti najinih najstnikov.
We'd occasionally choose a topic to talk about at the dinner table together.
Včasih smo izbrali temo, o kateri smo se pogovarjali za mizo pri večeri.
Generally, it went quite well.
Običajno je šlo vse v redu.
But one day it didn't.
Ampak enkrat ni šlo.
And we cannot remember what we were arguing about.
Ne spomnimo se, o čem točno sva razpravljala.
But clearly, Bernie and I were having an argument that was nearly as bad as potatoes.
Ampak očitno sva prišla do nekega prepira, ki je bil skoraj tako slab kot tisti o krompirju.
And we were completely oblivious of three teenagers.
In enostavno sva zanemarila 3 najstnike, ki so bili tukaj.
And then our middle son.
In potem najin srednji sin.
The middle of three is generally the peacemaker.
Tisti, ki je na sredini od 3, je običajno mirotvorec.
And he banged the table.
In on je udaril po mizi.
Mum, Dad,
Rekel, mama, oče,
stop arguing.
nehajte se prepirati.
I mean, you're family therapists.
Mislim, vse ste družinska terapeuta.
You know better than this.
Se veste bolje kot to, kar kažete.
And then he turned to me. Oh, he turned to Bernie.
Potem se je obrnil k Brnju
And he said, Dad,
in rekel, oče,
listen to Mum with your heart.
poslušaj mamo s srcem,
Think about her feelings.
razmišljaj o njenih čustvih.
I love my son.
In jaz sem mislil, kako imam rada svojega sina.
And then he turns to me
Potem se je obrnil k meni
and Mum.
in rekel, mama,
Listen to Dad with your brain.
poslušaj očeta s svojimi možgani,
Because he has some really sensible things to say.
ker ima res nekaj pametnih stvari za povedati.
Or like,
Okay.
oh,
To boli.
right. But you know, that taught us something really interesting.
Ampak to nas je naučilo nekaj zanimivega.
Because we've discovered that when we have a conflict that gets out of hand,
Ker smo odkrila, da ko pride do konflikta, ki uide nadzoru,
it's often an argument between the heart and the head.
je v resnici to največkrat konflikt med srcem in možgani, glavo.
One person is talking about their emotions and wants to be understood for their emotions.
Ena oseba govori o svojih čustvih in želi biti razumeta na tem področju,
And the other person's going, well, surely you can see what you need to do.
druga oseba pa reče, pa sej menda vidiš, kaj je treba narediti.
This is how to fix it. I
Tako
mean,
je treba to popraviti, urediti.
this is the rational thing.
To je racionalna, pametna stvar v tej situaciji.
But let me tell you something.
Ampak naj vam nekaj povem.
When you are distressed in your emotions
Ko ste vznemirjeni v svojih čustvih
and you have that cortisol and adrenaline going on in here,
in ko ta kortizol in adrenalin divjata tu,
not only does it shut off your empathy,
ne samo to, da ugasne vašo empatijo,
but you can't really think rationally either.
ampak preprosto ne morete racionalno razmišljati.
And there's no point in having a rational argument with someone who is emotionally distressed.
In nobenega smisla ni v tem, da poskušate imeti racionalen pogovor z nekom, ki je v emocionalno vznemirjen.
You must help them to calm down first.
Najprej morate pomagati tej osebi, da se pomiri.
Because if they're not calmed down, forget trying to be rational with
Ker
them.
če ta oseba ni mirna, ne morete racionalno se pogovarjati.
You will just make things worse.
Stvari boste naredili še slabše.
So this is an important life lesson.
To je pomembna življenjska lekcija.
So if you see someone is emotionally distressed,
Če vidite nekoga, ki je v neki čustveni stiski,
help them to calm down.
pomagajte tej osebi, da se pomiri najprej.
You can just start by saying, I'm sorry.
Lahko začnete s tem, da rečete, žal
Let's
mi
just
je.
take a break here.
Narediva tu pauzo.
You need to know I love you.
Moraš vedeti, da te imam rad.
I really love you.
Res te imam
Let
rad.
me make you a cup of tea.
Naj ti naredim skodelico čaja.
That's what British people do. Just
Tako to Angleži počnejo.
lots of cups of tea.
Ja, veliko skodeli čaja.
And then when the person has calmed down,
In ko se oseba pomiri,
listen to their feelings
poslušajte občutke te osebe
and affirm them,
in jih potrdite.
and then say, and here are some ideas.
In potem rečete, tu so ideje, predlogi.
What ideas do you have?
Kakšne ideje imaš ti?
You need to know that it can take at least 40 minutes for the emotional part of the brain to calm down.
Vedeti morate, da je potrebno včasih najmanj 40 minut, da se emocionalni del možganov pomiri.
So give it plenty of time.
Zato dajte dovolj časa.
This is where someone might go for a walk for a while
To je, kjer lahko greste na sprehod.
so they can calm down. But
Da se pomirite.
it can take up to 3 hours.
Ampak to lahko traja tudi do 3 ure.
And even when Bernie and I have the potato argument in a seminar like this,
In tudi ko imava z Brnjem ta prepir o krompirju v seminarjih, kot je ta,
which isn't even a real argument,
kar v resnici niti ni bil stvaren prepir,
but in order to do that, I have to get really emotional.
ampak da bi ga uspešno opravila, moram postati zelo emocionalna.
I know it takes me at least 40 minutes to calm down while I'm teaching.
Vem, da potrebujem vsaj 40 minut potem, da se pomirim.
I can still probably feel a bit of the buzz
Še
now,
vedno, tudi zdaj verjetno čutim malo te napetosti.
and it wasn't even a real one.
Pa čeprav ni bil resničen prepir.
But we need to be aware of what happens in our brains when we're in these argumentative
Zavedati
states.
se moramo, kaj se dogaja v naših možganih, ko smo v tem stanju.
So when our son got married and my husband and I had to do a speech at the wedding,
Ko se naj sin poročil in sva z možem imela govor na poroki,
and everyone knows we're family therapists and we're going to dispense some wisdom to them,
in ker vsi vedo, da smo družinska terapeuta in bomo malo modrosti podelila,
we told this story.
smo povedala to zgodbo.
It was like, I don't think we need to tell him anything.
Sorry?
We don't need to tell him anything
Ne rabimo mu nič povedati več novega,
because we
sinu,
learned so much from him.
ker smo se veliko naučila.
He doesn't remember it at all, fortunately.
Na srečo se on tega ne spominja več,
That was good.
kar je dobro.
He's like, what? I don't ever remember this happening in our family.
Je
But
rekel, kaj,
We assured
ne
him.
spomnim se, da bi se to zgodilo.
it did.
Ampak
So-
se,
Know how to soothe each other when you're emotionally distressed.
naučite se pomiriti drug drugega, ko ste emocionalno vznemirjeni.
What are some of the things that you can do to calm someone down?
Kaj lahko naredite, da nekoga pomirite?
What would calm you down?
Kaj bi vas pomirilo?
Have you got any ideas?
Imate predloge? Hug.
A hug? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hug.
You have an idea?
Odem po svoje postelje i pomolim se Jezusu, Očetu, Bogu,
To-
Svetu.
To pray.
To pray, yes. Praying can calm down.
Ja, molitev nas pomiri.
That's good.
Walk.
Walk. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to do the prayer quietly inside because some people can actually get quite frustrated if someone says now it's time to pray and they're not ready. So
Včasih-
sometimes one person has to
Včasih
pray
moramo
inside.
moliti v sebi, ker če nekdo ni pripravljen na molitev, lahko s predlogom za molitev povzročimo še več frustracije.
Sometimes when we are also distressed, we just need to say, help me God,
Včasih, ko smo mi pod pritiskom, torej moramo reči, Bog, pomagaj mi.
because it's hard to find words.
Težko je najti besede,
But God understands even when we can't find the
ampak
words.
Bog razume, tudi ko mi ne moremo vsega obesediti.
So a hug, a prayer, either quietly or together.
Objem, molitev,
Cup of
tiho,
tea, a walk.
skupaj, sprehod, skodelica čaja.
You will probably know what calms people down that you love.
Verjetno veste, kaj pomirja ljudi, ki jih imate radi.
And it's important to know what they are.
In pomembno je vedeti to.
Because couples that tend to manage their conflicts well also know usually how to soothe each other.
Ker pari, ki znajo dobro upravljati s svojimi konflikti, so običajno tudi pari, ki znajo drug drugega pomiriti.
And at some point, it's quite good to have a laugh at your arguments,
In
not
na
in the moment,
Na neki točki je prav dobro tudi nasmejati se s svojim prepirom, ne takrat, ko je prepir tu.
So, I mean, Bernie and I laugh at this situation I just told you
Z
now.
Brnjem se smejimo večkrat v tej situaciji, ki sem vam jo malo prej povedala.
So you laugh together at the situation, not at each other.
Smejite se situacije, ne drug drugemu.
And get plenty of sleep.
In poskrbite, da boste dovolj spali.
Tiredness makes people more argumentative.
Utrujenost naredi ljudi bolj prepirljive.
And for me, hunger.
In za mene tudi lakota.
In England, we have this word, hangry, that we're so hungry, we're angry.
V angleščini je ta beseda, ne, da je nekdo tako lačen, da je jezen. Hkrati lahko združimo v eno
And
besedo.
Bernie will say, Karen, why don't you just go and eat something?
In Bernie včasih reče, Karen, veš kaj, mislim, da moraš nekaj pojesti.
And also, he gives me pieces of chocolate,
In daje mi tudi čokolado,
which tends to make everything better.
ki pri meni vse poboljša.
So, creative solutions. Oh, I'm going to give you a break now.
Zdaj vam bom dala odmor.
So have a break now for 10-15 minutes.
Vidimo se v 11:30 spet tukaj.
Okay.
Okay. Ja. In potem je pred nami še zadnja ura, nekje do 12:30 bomo zaključili. Tako da načrtujete.